A very warm welcome to Art Gallery Explorer, the vlog which explores and celebrates the London art scene. Coming up, today, art lovers, I want to explore with you the UK's first ever exhibition dedicated to the portraits of Norwegian master Edvard Munch. Munch is obviously widely known for works such as the Scream and swirling impressionistic and symbolist works. But he actually produced over 400 portraits and self-portraits in his lifetime. And there's going to be 45 on display at the National Portrait Gallery today. I'm really interested to explore Munch as a portraitist and self-portraitist in this show, which is on until the 15th of June. And the pre-publicity exhibition blurb sets the bar high by saying that Munch is widely considered to be one of the greatest portraitists of the 19th and 20th century. Is he that? I'm not sure. Let's go and find out. Come and join me as I head inside the wonderfully refurbished National Portrait Gallery here just off Trafalgar Square in London. that's a wrap, art lovers. I hope that gave you a sense of the Edvard Munch show. I've come for a wander to gather my thoughts and found a quiet place in St James's to post this review of the show. And actually I was able to bring you every single work in the exhibition. I always say, get along, support the gallery and see the work with your own eyes. Nothing can beat that. But if you're not able to because you live overseas, or maybe you're not able to travel to London for this show, then you will have seen the whole show. So hopefully that gave you some pleasure. I always think about these shows in terms of the good, the bad and the beautiful. And if we start with the good, I really enjoyed seeing a kind of underrated part of Munch's output. This was the first big showing of Munch's portraits, and the only one, as far as I'm aware, in the UK of Munch's portraits in London. So it was really special to kind of get a sense of him as a portrait painter and how his work changed over time. Because there were so many portraits, I really enjoyed seeing how his artistic style developed through the medium of portraiture, from a quite traditional base as he learned to be an artist, through flirtations and dabblings with Impressionism, and onto the clear influence of Expressionism in some of the more mature works. That was really good. And also the second thing was, I loved particularly the Bohemia section, but the overall thesis of the show, which was challenging this idea that Munch was a kind of isolated hermit who was a tortured soul. This show puts forward the idea that he was incredibly social, and the connections to friends, creatives and patrons was really, really important to who he was as a person. So I love where we saw Strindberg and Ibsen and this beautiful tender picture of Delius, who was a dear friend. All of these connections across the whole show definitely made me think about Munch in a different light, so I really enjoyed that. And it comes recommended, this show, definitely. It's a must-see for Munch lovers. In terms of the bad, there were a couple of the things that stopped this from being a 10 out of 10 zinger. Firstly, if I was titling this show, it would almost be Munch restrained or constrained a bit. Munch was an expressionist par excellence, and I love expressionism. I wrote my university dissertation on the German Weimar expressionists, focusing particularly on Otto Dix, and yet lots of these portraits seemed quite traditional. There were flashes of expressionism, as I'm going to explain in the portraits I particularly liked, but lots of them weren't, and I wanted more Munch, really. I wanted more of that radical expressionist style which made him a great artist. And linked to that, in my title of this vlog, I said, is Munch a great portrait painter? And having seen lots of portraits together, I would say he's good and touches greatness in a few places, but is not up there with the full greats. For me, a great portrait painter has to strip back to the psychological depths of the person they're painting. For me, Rembrandt is the greatest portrait painter in Western art of all time, because he does that. I've just been gobsmacked in the Hermitage in Russia when we could travel there. One of his portraits over there, where you're literally looking at the whole life of a person in one painting. You don't get that as much with Munch. He's good, and he definitely captures the essence of some of his sitters, but he doesn't do it consistently enough for me to consider him a great. I think he's very, very good, though. And the other thing I sort of was a tiny bit disappointed about was the lack of self-portraits. According to the Munch Museum website, he produced over 80 self-portraits, and there was less than a handful in this exhibition, one of which, by the way, was an absolute highlight, this one. But I'd like to have seen more of his self-portraits, because some of these are some of his most important work in some ways, especially the later ones when he was back in Norway. But that's a small quibble. I did enjoy the show overall, and it does come recommended. In terms of the beautiful, well, I obviously love a sucker for expressionism, so I loved the works which I consider the most expressionist. Dr. Daniel Jacobson, look at this wild picture. The exhibition explains he wasn't very happy with it, but anyway, it's a great work of art in my opinion. I love this Felix Auerbach painting. Look at the red lips and the background with the stars, which clearly shows an influence of Van Gogh, who Munch was exploring a lot at the time as well. And despite myself, because I definitely wouldn't have liked her as a person, I did enjoy this kind of rather almost spiteful portrait, I suppose, of Elizabeth Foster Nietzsche, who didn't seem a very nice person, but he captures her nonetheless. And finally, I really, being in London, like this pre-Raphaelite-esque almost love token of a painting called The Brooch, which Munch painted for somebody he was deeply in love with. And so I really enjoyed those works the most, but there were lots that I enjoyed as well. So overall, I'm going to give this show a 7.5 out of 10. I think it's a good show. It's a must-see if you're a Munch fan or an Expressionist fan. But hopefully the reasons I've explained mean that it's not like a 10 out of 10. But the National Portrait Gallery are on fantastic form. And this is actually their smaller of two exhibitions. It's upstairs in the National Portrait Gallery with the Face magazine show downstairs. I do think that £23.50 or £21 without a donation is a tiny weeny bit expensive for what is a small show. I bought you every single work and was in there for about 40 minutes. But having said that, look, listen, London art galleries are in trouble at the moment, not actually so much the National Portrait Gallery, but certain others, and I'm going to be covering that in a vlog, so I'm not going to kind of moan about the price when I think that, you know, you're getting to see an exhibition which has never been shown in London before. I hope you enjoyed it anyway. Do subscribe and hit that notification bell for many more exhibitions in London across the next few weeks and months. And thank you ever so much for watching.